Pretorius Amniotic was founded over a century ago by Dr. Victor Pretorius as a final solution to the inevitable result of old age and disease via suspended animation. Through a process of first stopping all motor function and consciousness with a precise cocktail of drugs, and then completely submerging the subject into a chamber containing the Pretorius amniotic compound, a proprietary formula, the individual was able to remain in an indefinite state of suspended animation. After decades of failures attempting to revive people who had been cryogenically frozen due to what was ironically referred to in scientific circles as freezer burn, it was heralded as the greatest advancement in the fight against mortality. Victor Pretorius was on the fast track to becoming a billionaire. He was one of the biggest celebrities alive, lauded as a genius, a savior. But soon, rapid advances in medicine and cybernetics would make the company all but obsolete. It had become possible through bioengineered steroidal saponins to eliminate virtually every fatal disease, and nanobot technology fused with robotics allowed the wealthy to all but completely reverse the natural deterioration of muscle and bone. Life expectancy for the upper classes had quickly reached an average of 180 years. Victor Pretorius had taken a risk when he dropped out of chemical technical and spent his family's fortune on the venture, investing everything to perfect the science and the process. The risk had paid off. This was his legacy. He felt like a god among men. But eventually, he could see the writing on the wall. Interest in Pretorius Amniotic was waning. His company would soon be facing utter bankruptcy. So he cashed out when he was presented with an offer from Nova Life Services to buy the company, more specifically, to buy the Pretorius Amniotic compound, a proprietary formula. Dr. Victor Pretorius lived the rest of his days as a wealthy man, but a man forgotten by the fickle masses. Nova Life Services quickly rebranded the company to Eternity Flux and marketed it to the middle class as what they referred to as a virtual time machine. Do you want to get rich quick? Do you want to see what the world will look like in 20 years, 100 years, 500? Nova Life Services will put a portion of your money into an interest-bearing account. You will awaken to a fantastic and wonderful new world. You'll be obscenely wealthy. You'll never have to work again. Escape the doldrums of this existence and experience the future. Visit your descendants and pass down your wisdom directly, with no fear of disrupting the space-time continuum. Then, when you tire of that world, do it again. Another 500 years. Live for a millennium. Own the future. Of course, when Nova Life Services went through their annual financial restructuring, cost-cutting measures were initiated. The initial cocktail of drugs meant to induce the comatose state necessary to halt metabolism was switched out for a more affordable and commonly produced anesthetic sedative. After tests performed on lab mice produced a success rate of 98% and upon revival showed no adverse effects whatsoever, the new process was enthusiastically adopted. It saved Nova hundreds of thousands of credits annually. The problems arose 2 decades later, when the first wave of customers that had received the less expensive drug cocktail were revived. Without exception, everyone who was brought back to consciousness was found to be utterly and completely insane. Their minds had been destroyed. Some exploded into extreme violence upon awakening and had to be neutralized. Some were completely nonverbal and non-reactive. Some babbled incoherently without cessation, while others simply wept. All of them were completely mad. Upon investigating, it was discovered that this cheaper drug cocktail lost its effectiveness roughly 2 to 3 years after being administered. The people in the sealed chambers of amniotic fluid regained consciousness. However, they remained completely unable to move or speak. Trapped in a perpetual nothingness, purgatory, sealed in their metal chambers, in isolated holding facilities, in a state of complete sensory deprivation, alone for decades, their minds were broken. The lawsuits came immediately, but Nova Life Services was quick to change the narrative and shift the blame. With inspectors, investigators, media, and politicians on their payroll, they were able to cover up their involvement and lay the responsibility directly on Dr. Pretorius and the process itself. In the eyes of the public, the legacy of Victor Pretorius became one of unbridled corporate greed, hubris, and monstrous medical experimentation. The Eternity Flux division has long been shut down and forgotten by the fickle masses. Client lists remain in moldering, dusty boxes in the basement of corporate HQ, and the storage facilities that still house the amniotic chambers have been abandoned and left to rot in the wasteland.